I always thought my apartment was just small, nothing out of the ordinary. Moving into the old building downtown was a step up from my cramped studio, or so I believed. It started with the mirror in my bedroom. Every morning, I'd notice tiny smudges or fingerprints on the surface. I chalked it up to my own negligence, thinking I must have touched it in my sleep. But last Tuesday, something was different. The room was cold, colder than usual, and my breath visible in the dim light. As I turned to face the mirror, I froze. My reflection wasn't mimicking my movements. My left eye was steady while the right one blinked slowly. I reached out to touch the glass, but my hand passed through as if it were fog. Panic set in. My reflection smiled back at me, a smile I hadn't made. I stumbled back, heart racing, and the glass went solid again, showing my normal image. The next day, I avoided the mirror as much as possible, covering it with a sheet. But the disturbances didn't stop. Objects moved on their own. My keys left in the kitchen appeared in the bathroom. Doors I was sure I had closed were wide open when I returned, and the feeling of being watched lingered constantly. One evening, after a particularly long day, I decided to confront what was happening. I stood before the covered mirror, took a deep breath, and pulled the sheet away. My reflection stared back, expression blank. I demanded to know what it wanted, or what was happening. The room grew colder, and I could almost feel something pressing against my skin, though I was alone. Suddenly, my reflection's eyes darkened, and it began to move towards me. I couldn't move. My body felt numb. It reached out a hand, fingers stretching unnaturally long, trying to grab me. I snapped out of it, stumbling back into the room, gasping for air. The mirror was just my reflection again, but the dread remained. I started sleeping with a light on, trying to keep the darkness at bay. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake, listening to the sounds of the apartment, creaks, the hum of traffic outside, and sometimes faint footsteps that didn't belong to me. Every time I looked near the mirror, the feeling of being trapped overcame me. Determined to find answers, I researched the building's history. It turned out the mirror had once belonged to a previous tenant who vanished without a trace 10 years ago. Neighbors spoke of strange sightings and unexplained noises, but nothing concrete. One night I decided to stay awake, to witness whatever would come. Hours passed with no incident, but exhaustion took over and I drifted into a restless sleep. When I awoke, the mirror was shattered, pieces scattered across the floor. Relief washed over me, thinking it was finally over. But then I saw it, small cracks forming on the remaining shards, and within them, tiny images of another person staring back at me. My heart pounded as I realized it wasn't just my reflection anymore. Something was breaking through, trying to come into my world. I packed my belongings hastily and left the apartment the next morning, not looking back until I was safely in my new place. Now, even miles away, I can't escape the feeling that it followed me, watching from reflections in windows, screens, any shiny surface. I try to avoid mirrors altogether, but it's as if it's already embedded itself into my life. Sleep is always interrupted by the fear that one day I won't be able to wake up, trapped in another reflection where I can't escape.